All right. Let's get this here show on the road, shall we? Yeah, I'm not surprised that there's only like 2 people watching this, because I guess when you do things, when you set up a stream through StreamYard, it must not, it must not give out the notifications like it does for, like when you actually set up the stream in YouTube, like I do for my live streams. Or not my live streams, my recorded videos. I actually set those up via uploading them through YouTube. I don't have to go through another platform like I do when I stream, because I use StreamYard because I don't have an audio capture system from my MacBook, and I don't want to pay money to use one, so I don't. But anyway, so I think it's got to be about a year or so ago now, I think. Braxton Hunter. Yes, I realized that. Thank you, Chrome. I don't need you to give me that. Braxton Hunter. I always have to think about his name because sometimes I want to say Hunter Braxton, but that's not correct. It's Braxton Hunter. Like I said, I think it was about, what's that say? I should probably just go to the YouTube page. Yeah, November 11th. Okay, so yeah, about a year ago. he did this video, and I remember watching it back when it got posted. I haven't really watched it since then. I do have it fast forwarded just because there was a bunch of like intro music band stuff, as you can kind of see there, that I don't think anybody really wants to watch. But I saw it pop up like 4 or 5 days ago in my sidebar, and I was like, you know what, that would actually be a decent video to review. So I figured I'd set up an Apologetics Analyzed, because it has been a while since I've done one, and I said, well, why not just look at this video here? I don't really talk actually that much about consciousness stuff on my channel. I wouldn't say I'm disinterested in it, but it's just not at the forefront of the things that I'm focusing on. But to give myself somewhat of a little break from some of the things I've been reading and researching for future videos and future live streams, and just for my own sake, I figured why not do something on a topic I don't cover all that frequently, which is consciousness, of the many that I don't cover frequently. So we're going to see what Braxton Hunter has to say about consciousness and why God explain. You know what? Hold on. Let me reshare this, because I don't remember checking a little box for audio, and I just want to make sure that I do that. Okay, they're okay. So alrighty, there we go. Is Braxton Hunter from Texas? I actually don't know if he's from Texas or if he's but oh, we can't hear what the hell is going on here? When I shared the window, it didn't give me the option to share. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. Oh, I forgot. I have to share Chrome tab, not share window. That's what I forgot to do. Share tab audio. Yes, there we go. Now we should be there. But anyway, what I was trying. Thank you for that, Hive Science. Appreciated. What I was trying to say is, you can tell that Braxton is from somewhere in the somewhere in the South. Excuse me. I think it's Texas, but don't quote me on that, because when he said evidence, it sounded like evidence. So that just made me laugh. I'm not going to replay. It was just a little intro about all the music you've just heard. You know, that's all a first-person experience. We call it consciousness, and we're here to talk about consciousness and whether or not it can be evidence for the existence of God. So we had no meat of the discussion yet, so I'm just going to keep going from where we're at. Hopefully that doesn't bother anybody.
Soul, as the song just said, and all kinds of other things about the afterlife. And so as we talk about that, I want to set it up by picking up on something that Brett said a few moments ago, and that is really one of the big conversations we're having right now in the world is whether artificial intelligences and robots can ever become conscious. I want us to start there and think about this for just a moment as you begin to maybe toy around with the notion that...
Just to answer myself, I do think it is possible for some form of artificial intelligence or robot to become conscious, the way that we would describe it, for the same reasons that we are conscious. Now, somebody who thinks that consciousness is going to have to be explained for, or explained by, rather, sorry, or accounted for by something external to the physical, probably is going to intrinsically reject the notion that like some sort of artificial intelligence or robot or automaton or what have you could be conscious. So that is not, and we are definitely going to get into the distinctions between the priors that people have when examining consciousness and the mind, but that is That would be my take on artificial intelligence actually being capable of developing a consciousness.
But maybe your consciousness and your brain aren't exactly the same thing, even if they're related. So on the screen right now, what you are going to see is you're going to see a number of consumer products that may be in your home or even in your pocket, depending on what they are. We have one of the early smartphones. Did anybody out there ever have one of these flip phones? Not a smartphone, but a flip phone. Anybody have that? Okay, you do. We have an early Apple phone, and now Apple smartphones and all the other smartphones have these voice assistants. Apple has Siri, and Siri can communicate with you. And what I want you to notice is these are brains of a sort. They're man-made brains. They're robot brains. But Siri is not really conscious. It's the best that they've been able to do with a consumer product with helping it to fake consciousness. But Siri is just spitting out pre-programmed responses to you. And actually, half the time, it's really frustrating because we have the Roomba robot too, and the Roomba robot will do good most of the time and then get stuck under the couch and you don't know what happened. And the problem is these things are frustrating to us. Now, they're amazing if you feel about it like we do in our family. We're blown away that these artificial intelligences and robots exist on the one hand, but then on the other hand, they're really frustrating because if you asked it this morning, hey, how do I get to One Life East? Maybe it told you, or maybe it said, I don't know, but here's a website. You can read about it on your own. Thanks. Well, why is that? It's because these things aren't conscious like a human being is conscious. Siri, Alexa, Google Home, they don't have this first-person experience. You're not really interacting with a real person who's conscious. You're just interacting with pre-programmed responses. So we have those brains of a sort, the best we can do at coming up with a fake consciousness. Then on the other hand, there are some robots that you probably have some affinities for in a place like One Life and the people that might show up to church at a church like One Life. I
do have to be honest, the point that he's getting at here is at least thus far lost on me. I don't know anybody except that one crazy guy from Google or whatever who's going to say that like these things are conscious, like our phones and Roomba and the artificial intelligences that we have. So this must be a longer point. I guess we'll have to see where it goes, huh?
Wager that some of you have some great feelings of love, admiration, or something toward one of these characters. Maybe not. We have Commander Data there, and Commander Data is on Star Trek, and you know, one of his story arcs is he really wants to be a real boy, basically. He wants to have that conscious experience of the world, or he acts like he does, and he wants to have a human experience of the world. Then we have the...
Wait, but what's funny there is that if he's desiring things, that seems to me to state that he has intentions. He understands and operates under the concept of normativity. What sense would he not be human? Or like a human in terms of his conscience? Like he's got desires. I would presume he has beliefs as well. Then if there's things that he wants, it just seems interesting to me.
The robot from Lost in Space, and some of you may remember the robot from Lost in Space who's always worried about Will Robinson, right? And then we have C-3PO. Everybody knows C-3PO. And when we look at these characters, you probably feel as though you have more of a human connection with these particular robots. And the problem is, yeah, you do, but they're not real. You're not really connecting with robots. Those other things, those consumer products, those are real robots, and you're not connecting on a human level with them. But these robots that are fictional, we really believe them. When we watch them on screen, we think, Commander Data really is sad that he's not a real human being. We look at the robot from Lost in Space and he's Will Robinson, and we really think he's consciously worried about Will Robinson. And C-3PO, when he says, we're doomed, we really think he's terrified. But the thing about it is, you're not really connecting with a robot when you're connecting with those fictional characters, are you? You're not connecting with C-3PO. You're connecting with this man, Anthony Daniels, the man who's inside of the suit, a real thinking, conscious person. So all this talk about artificial intelligences and robots, we're going to...
Right, but that doesn't seem to make sense to me. Why, like when people look at C3PO, they don't see the actor. That's part of like that whole disconnecting a character from the actor or actress that plays them. Like, sure, there's some extent to which when people think of Harry Potter, they might think of Daniel Radcliffe, but that's probably only going to be in the sense that Daniel Radcliffe's face might be the face that they see. But when they see that face, they're going to be thinking of Harry Potter, not of Daniel Radcliffe, even if subconsciously that they know that's who that is. But I don't think the fact that characters are portrayed or can be portrayed by humans necessarily means that, I mean, so I suppose I would ask, would Braxton say the same thing about like in a cartoon? Like with you're not actually like getting a connection to the character, it's a connection to the person who's voicing them? Because I don't think it would really be accurate there either to say that. I personally I don't agree with that.
We're going to come back to that later on. But what I want you to realize right now is we've done the best we can so far and still not conscious. Most of them will tell you they're still not conscious if you ask them. On the other hand, what we know we connect with in a conscious way, in a human way, are fictional robots that are actually humans and other human beings. This seems like something that is really powerful and different than just a brain, because those robots have a brain of a sort. Another way to help you understand exactly the difference between your conscious first-person experience of the world, the way that you're awake to the world, like robots are not, is this thought experiment that comes to us from a man named Frank Jackson.
Also, how is it that Braxton knows that like C3PO or the whatever, what was this, Commander Data, whatever Data guy from Star Trek? I didn't watch these shows, so I don't know what. How does he know that is he just presuming they're not conscious because they're a robot? Is he sort of building this notion that you can't, or building this idea that they can't be conscious off of his prior assumption that consciousness can't be merely physical? How do we know that in these shows with these advanced societies that these beings aren't actually conscious? Maybe not exactly like a human, but in ways similar enough to a human that they can express the varieties of things that we can, including emotions and what have you. I just don't know in what sense. Just like I said earlier, if that Data guy's got desires and beliefs, how is he not conscious? So that's, and I'm sure as this goes on, we're going to get deeper into like I said, the whole distinctions based on the priors that people look at to examine consciousness to begin with. So
now I want you to hang with me. This is the part where if you've got a thinking cap, put it on and straighten it up a little bit. This will cause you to have to think a little deeply about this. But imagine that we have a story of a woman who is 35 years old, and her whole life she's been in a black and white room. She's never seen color. Now, I know that this is hard for you to imagine, but just imagine that it's possible that we have a person who's 35 years old, and this woman has never seen color. Her favorite color, though she's never seen color, is red. She studied all of the symbolic imagery about the color red.
There we go. We're going to get the wrong. My friend Mary, who lived in a room in which there was no color but black and white, if we call those colors. Yep, that's what this is. For those who don't know, the Mary's Room, I would imagine most of the people viewing this and subscribe to my channel are probably familiar with the Mary's Room experiment. I'm gonna let Braxton go through this before I really talk about it, just because I want to hear him lay this out and see how it is that he's gonna lay this out. Then we'll work from there.
She knows all about the wavelengths and the light and all that stuff that makes red possible, but she's never seen the color red. In fact, we could say she actually begins a program in college to try and get a degree in color spectrum theory. And she gets a PhD in color spectrum theory. Her emphasis is the color red, and she knows more facts about the color red than any other person on the planet. But remember, she's never seen it. Now, here's the question. Her brain has all the facts, but if she escapes the room and the first thing she sees is red, the question is, does she learn anything. She knows all the facts. That's in her brain. Does she learn anything when she experiences red?
Now, the answer to my question is yes, she does. And I would say that is because she does not actually have all the facts. Physically seeing and having the experience of seeing a color is the result of physical systems and the relations that they stand in with other physical systems or structures and the processes that are had as a result of this interrelation. So it's all going to be physical. And her brain, Mary's brain, I don't know if he's used the name Mary, but I am because it's Mary's room is what it's called. Mary's brain has not sort of stood in the physical state of experiencing red. And so her brain actually does not have all of the facts with respect to the color red. She knows all of a certain variety of facts, a certain set of, like, I don't really want to use the term conceptual, but like I guess you could say academic information. But I would say she does not have all of the facts about red until she sees it. And that is why she learns something. And so I guess from my perspective, from my worldview, Mary's room isn't really much of a problem. But this is something that I have seen some other people talk about, is that the room, or the whole example of Mary's room, and that, well, does she learn anything when she sees the color red, despite the fact that she already had all of the physical facts? Braxton forgot to use that word because that's really the emphasis there, is that it's a, sort of an attempt to like undermine physicalism. That, well, if she learned, theoretically speaking, if Mary learned everything, every physical fact there was to know about the color red, but she's never seen it, she's never actually experienced red, does she know, does she learn something when she sees it? And that this presumes that experience cannot be rooted in physical facts, and that thereby lacking the experience of something, one can't be in a state of actually lacking some physical facts about it. And I just don't have that presupposition. So I would say that no, Mary does not have all the facts, all of the physical facts about red. And thus, when she actually experiences it herself, she learns something.
For the first time, I want to say that I think she does. What she learns is what it's like to see red. She knew all the facts.
Now, see, this is a tricky term. When I hear people talk about qualia, or what it's likeness, as it's often put, I always ask what they mean by that, because I'm genuinely not sure I understand what those terms actually mean. I'm not sure I understand what its likeness is, or what qualia is supposed to be. Maybe that's just my own ignorance. Could very well be the case, but I don't really have a strong understanding of, or a good intuition about what that is.
But now she's got what it's like, this first person experience of the color red. That's what it means to be conscious, to have that kind of an experience. It's an amazing thing. And because of that experience of red being different from just the facts, it's like your brain serves up all the facts and all the data, and then you and your conscious experience make decisions based on those facts, and you decide what you're going to do, and you can imagine. In fact, some of the greatest things about being human are possible because of our consciousness. The things that matter the most. Think about free will, for example. You have free will to make real choices that are meaningful because you have a conscious experience. Because free will is the conscious activity of looking at things and making a conscious decision of one thing over another thing. We have that. We have love, because love is a conscious decision to give of yourself for the good of someone else that you love.
Is Braxton, is he saying that humans are the only animals that have free will? Because I don't think that would be true. Also, is he saying that we're the only animals that feel love? because I don't think that would be true either. Elephants, I think it's been shown that elephants mourn. I might be wrong on this. I might have a different animal in mind, or I might just be misremembering. But I thought I read an article somewhere that said something about that there were elephants that had returned years later to a place where some other elephants had died or had been killed, and seemed to be showing signs of mourning. That we've seen in elephants, that they mourn even years later the death of other members of their species, just like humans do. So this, I mean, people might say, well, that's not love. You don't. Okay, what's the argument that it's not love? From what else do we mourn? I guess would be a question that I would have.
And we also have.
So, in short, I think that these things do manifest, do obtain in other animal species. I think that there is some uniqueness to humans, of course, but I don't think we should be so quick to put ourselves as unique beyond, what we really are.
Imagination, the conscious activity of thinking about the way things are right now and how they could be later on. A song that hasn't been written yet, but you could write it, a work of art, someone who you are in love with, you can imagine what it would be like to be them so that you can love them better. The most important things about being a human being are things that we have because we are conscious. It's really important. And it doesn't seem like we had to be, because these robots aren't. In fact, I think we can detail this a little more by thinking about what it would be like if we weren't conscious. If we had brains but weren't conscious. Now, we've looked at some things like that. We saw the robots. They have a computer brain, but yet no consciousness. And they don't have what matters most about being human. But we actually, in pop culture, like TV, movies, and stuff like that, have come up with an idea for a thought experiment of what it would be like if you had a human being with a body and a brain, but no consciousness. I wonder if any of you all, and it's a little awkward bringing this up in church, but I wonder how many of you have ever seen the television program Walking Dead. Anybody raise your hand out there? Okay, a few of you out there, and some of you are afraid to mention that in church or admit that. But Walking Dead is all about zombies. And what are zombies? Well, they're not real, Braxton. Yes, I know, calm down, they're not real. But
are we going to get into a discussion about pea zombies now?
even though they're not real, they give us a way of imagining what it would be like if you had a brain and a body, but no consciousness. And basically, you'd be wandering around following your instincts everywhere, basically. You clip out consciousness, and you clip out the most meaningful things about being a human: free will, love, imagination. And it doesn't seem like this is something that we've reproduced in artificial intelligences. You clip out consciousness and you clip out what matters the most. What I want you to do over the next few moments is I want you to think about all the things that are going on in the room. I want you to do an experiment with me. I want you to count all of the things that you are consciously perceiving over the next few moments. And if you've got a pair of 3D glasses, might be a good time to put them on.
I'm not sure I know what this is, but we might just skip over it. Let's see here. Are we done? Okay. Okay, we're done.
Wow, it's sensory overload, man. That is fantastic. Probably not. You probably lost track. But it's amazing because all of that is possible because of your consciousness. We know consciousness is amazing. And then the question becomes, okay, well, what is it exactly? How is it possible?
See, when he says consciousness is amazing, like, sure, I can agree with that to some extent, but like if I guess there's some sense in which I would say that I don't think consciousness is really that profound of a thing. Probably because I see it as very much a complex, emergent, processual system, and I just don't think such things are really that profound to see in reality. I think that we see them in many different places in a variety. It might be consciousness is amazing, but it's not amazing in any way that, at least for me, would seem to imply that we need to go beyond merely the physical or the natural to account for what it is.
Possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 4 problems that I face. And when we look at these 4 problems, them matter you just brain consciousness zip out the brain. Well, you might think, well, what does that mean? Matter. And I woke up this morning. What you did wake is how is it brain? You have a person who's awake. It's a little bit of a problem. And by the way, just in case you think, well, yeah, you're going to say it's a problem for how we're conscious. Of course, you're going to say that. You're a preacher. You're a theologian. Okay, I understand that concern, and that's a valid concern. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Philip Goff, who is a philosopher.
Brain, we see beginnings of an explanation of how complicated electrochemical signaling is some give rise to an sounds, smells, and tastes every second of waking life.
So I was I'm just weak at the moment and keep it from cutting in and out as little, as much as possible. Keep it from stairs to check router, whatever the hell the damn thing's called. He was saying something, because y'all were already listening to it. It seemed that he was saying something about like rich qualitative aspects of our the neurophysiological and neurochemical and even some of the computational processes that occur in the brain. And while that may be true, I don't think that really means anything. And this is one of the things that I have with some of these arguments with respect to consciousness, is that it really seems that the biggest argument against physicalism is that physical facts, physical models, physical theories, whatever it is that you want to say, are not capable of, in and of themselves, fully accounting for all of the aspects of consciousness and conscious experience. And I just don't understand what turns on that, because we could point to practically any field of the physical sciences, and there are going to be vast reaches within them that we have very little understanding of. Some places where we have some understanding, but it's not full. And in none of those instances do people say, oh, well, this must mean that physical science and natural science is done, and we've got to turn to something beyond the natural and beyond the physical in order to explain these things. I mean, we have absolutely no idea how gravity works at the quantum scale, or emerges out of it, or whatever it may be. But nobody's saying that, oh, we're going to have to turn to non-physical. I struggle with the idea that, well, why is it that when it's the same with respect to consciousness, all of a sudden, we have to turn to stuff beyond the physical and beyond the natural in order to be capable of accounting for it. It's just, it seems unjustified to do that, and it gets a little frustrating, honestly. And if I cut in and out, I do deeply apologize. There isn't really much I can do about my internet connection. It says that it's, you know, strong. I mean, it's one down from very strong on my laptop, but on StreamYard it's saying that it's very weak and unstable. So I don't really know what that tells me the issue.
Very issue. Even have the beginning.
But I actually do the aspects of just the neurochemical processes, but that we've been capable of mapping even images, computers. So we have been thoughts, technically speaking. So the notion of, you know, considering
Maybe some
advancements,
of you were thinking a moment ago, you threw up those, and sure, they're not conscious, but Musk and everybody else, maybe you will get a complex conscious, even though it's not a human being. But something that is topic today, who is a famous philosopher and has scientific breakthroughs, and he said, "Think conscious." He said, "Look at."
I should say mathematical physicist and theoretical physicist. He's not an, you know, that's no disrespect to the guy, but brilliant, one of the world's most brilliant physicists, certainly of the last century, but not an expert with respect to this.
Complicated artificial intelligence is the answer. So there are two options that we're going to look at here real quickly. One option is maybe the way that dirt wakes up and you're awake to the world in a way that grass and robots are not. Maybe that's because everything is conscious. You're conscious, but everything is conscious. Believe it or not, this is a popular view that's getting more popular all the time in the philosophy of mind and in the science about this, and it's called panpsychism. Now, don't worry about that. There won't be a test, and you'll probably never need to know that, but you can Google it if you want to. Panpsychism is the view that everything on some level is conscious. Electrons are conscious. Cheese.
Sorry about that pause. I was just checking my own stream, and when I play it, my laptop automatically pauses any other YouTube windows that I have open. Because Nestle in my chat tells me that this is complete in the chat. But I'm gonna at least try to power through. I don't understand what the Wi-Fi connection is. What the problem is? It's like I said. I'm at out of the 4 levels of strength that my laptop can show me. I'm at 3. out of 4. So I don't understand why StreamYard has me at 1 out of 3. I'm very confused. Any problem what to do because to my Wi-Fi be strong and I have problems. I've been playing, those suck way more power than StreamYard. So hopefully it stays, improved and doesn't get worse. But
cheesecake is conscious, bricks are conscious, you're conscious, everything. This stage is conscious. Now, they don't think that it's conscious to the degree that you are, whatever that means, but to some degree of consciousness. The problem with that is there's really not any evidence. It's just kind of a way to kind of try to answer the question of how you became conscious. Well, because everything's conscious. Okay, so there's that, if you want to think about that for a moment. And then there's a naturalistic answer, like an atheist might say, an atheistic naturalistic answer that says, well, maybe the solution is nothing is conscious, including you, at least not the way that you think. Alex Rosenberg, author of The Atheist's Guide to Reality, says the following: the illusion that there is something inside that has thoughts about stuff is certainly as old as the illusion that there are thoughts about stuff. They almost certainly evolved together as a package deal. But if the physical facts fix all the facts, then there can't be a me or you inside our bodies with a special point of view. When it fixed the facts, physics ruled out the existence of selves, souls, persons, or non-physical minds inhabiting our...
Yeah, I opened up my door to hopefully get a better signal, but like I said, I literally have no idea what to do. The Wi-Fi on my computer is doing just fine. On my phone is doing just fine. This is StreamYard. This is not me. So I'm really sorry, guys. I don't know what to do, and I don't really just want to end the stream. But if it just does not improve, then I guess I'll have to do that. But I just wanted to say here, hopefully people can make sense of what I'm saying, that I don't have to agree with Alex Rosenberg. And in fact, I don't think I really would. Michael Granado's in the chat. Nice to see you. I don't really agree with a lot of what Alan Rose. I mean, I think Alan Rosenberg is a brilliant philosopher, scientist. I've read entries that he's written in certain textbooks and things like that, but I don't really. There are a lot of things I don't agree with him on, and I don't really have to agree with him. And so the fact that he might think physics rules out all these things, and there aren't really selves, and so I don't think there are souls. But do I think that there are selves or persons in some sense or another? Yes, I do.
Our bodies. He later says about this, our brain navigates us through life very nicely, thank you, without ever thinking about anything. Now think about what's just been said. This is one naturalistic answer. There are others, but this is one naturalistic answer, is that, well, yeah, it is hard to explain how matter becomes conscious, but listen, the solution may be that everything's conscious, and it may be that nothing's conscious, including you, at least not the way that you think you're conscious. It's more of just an illusion, an afterthought. Your brain's really doing everything. Now, I'll just tell you as a pro tip, if any philosopher, atheist, Christian, or anybody else ever suggests to you that maybe you should adopt the position that you don't exist, then I would encourage you to reject that view.
Yeah, but what's meant by you there? That's the question. It's like when they say you, do they mean all of the physical parts that constitute your body, or do they mean this concept of a soul? So that's going to depend on what they mean by you in that context.
View, all right? So we've got those possible answers. One doesn't have any evidence, and one seems like it doesn't make sense of our experience. But that's problem number one. We've got to come to an answer about that problem. But problem number two is, are you just your body? We had a song where he says, you have a body, you are a soul. You're not a body, you have a soul. Well, God wanted us to be spiritual, soulish beings in a physical body if you believe in God. But here's the question we've got to ask about this idea of, are you your body? If you're just your body, and your brain is just what you are. And we do kind of think that way almost default, don't we? I mean, if you touch me, I say, you touched me. You touched my physical body. Maybe on my brain. Maybe that's what's going on. But do you know that your body actually isn't the same body you used to have? This may be shocking to you, But ever so often, your cells cycle out over 7 to 10 years and are replaced by new cells. Some of them happen more quickly than others. Blood cells are different than skin cells, but even right now,
I'll put the video on the lowest quality setting, and we'll see if that improves, because I don't know how to do just audio, and I don't really want to do just audio because I don't do podcasting. So, and then I just feel like I'm fucking podcasting at that point. So I put it on 144p. That's the lowest quality. Hopefully, if the audio's good and the video's choppy, I'm kind of okay with that, but I'll do this just to see if it clears it up.
now you're fluffing off dead. Just
obviously not clear up the video because it's the lowest quality setting, but clear up, you know, the choppiness.
You're fluffing off all these dead skin cells right here in our midst, and you're replacing those with new skin cells, which means after a couple of decades, you don't have the same physical body that you used to have. And so we've got a real problem with what does it mean to talk about you. Now, this is an example that some of you may have heard before of this sort of idea, but whether or not George Washington ever chopped down a proverbial cherry tree, you familiar with that story? If someone put an axe in my hand and said, this is the axe, and there's only two parts, the head and the handle. This is the axe that George Washington used to chop down the cherry tree. Braxton, you're holding the axe. Now, the head of it's been changed 17 times, and the handle of it's been changed 30 times, but you're holding the axe. Well, am I? I mean, I don't really feel like I am because there's only two parts to this, and they've all been changed, right? It's not the same axe. In the same way, if you're just your body and your body it gets changed and cells are replaced over time, at some point, you're not you anymore if you were your body. And I don't mean it like, oh, I'm...
Well, but that's if by you mean just your body. What if you mean like your body and all of the variety of processes and functions that it engages in that are themselves not changed by minor replacements of like molecular level parts of the system? Like, I just don't think... Like, Earth has an atmosphere despite the fact that particles come into and leave Earth's atmosphere all the time. But nobody's going to say that, like, Earth doesn't have an atmosphere, or that Earth's atmosphere isn't physical or something like that. I don't know. It's just like, it seems almost like we're just like, are we going to do ship of Theseus right now? Like, what's going on with this? And again, I apologize for the quality. I'm doing everything I can. I absolutely do not want to end the stream. That is the very last thing that I want to do, because having to do things like that just pisses me off. But like I said, just keep me informed as to the quality. And if it gets to the point where it's just choppy and in and out, then I might just put this off to, like, you know, Thursday or Friday or something. But I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try to power through it.
I'm not the same person I used to be. No, we're talking about you're literally not the same identity that you used to be. And that is a serious, serious problem. Whatever the solution is, it's got to handle problem number two. Number three, the next problem is, are the brain and consciousness related? See, the issue here is, it does seem to be the case, doesn't it? That we can change our conscious experience by interacting with our brains. Some of you may be on anxiety medication or depression medication. This is something that changes your brain chemistry. And then because of that, your conscious experience change. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And then, of course, there are great stories, like amazing stories anyway. Like, there's a man who had a railroad spike shot through his head, and he survived. And he actually went on living, but he had a different conscious experience. So it does seem like there's some connection between our consciousness and our brain, but yet they're not the exact same thing. And so
I mean, there seems to be, you know, a relationship between nuclear fusion processes that occur in stars and, you know, the material that they're made of. But let's not act like nuclear fusion processes is like not a physical thing. Processes, I think, can be understood, at least in some like ontic sense, as being different than perhaps the system or structure in which they take place. But I don't think that that necessarily entails that they're not like of the same sort of ontological nature as the system or the structure in which they take place. Like physical processes, sure, they might be something in some way distinct from the structure that they take place in, but that doesn't mean that they are not themselves physical.
We've got to come to a solution about that. And then four, we've got to have a solution about whether consciousness exists without the brain, without the physical body, without the brain. Now, this one...
I know it's cliche. I know it's so cliche. But I am going to ask. I am going to ask. Have we ever observed consciousness without a brain or some other form of physical substrate in which the consciousness is sort of grounded, or which has processes in which it's grounded? Because we have that with the brain. But somebody can show me consciousness without something physical, I'd be convinced right then and there.
This one is a bit mind-blowing, and you're about to, some of you might roll your eyes a little bit, but just stay with me. It's too early for you to thinking I'm a kook yet. But I want you to understand that we have these experiences that happen that are written up in the medical journals. People talk about them all the time. 30 million cases in America, England, and Europe that are near-death experiences. Now, there's a lot of eye rolling when you talk about near-death experiences, because even among Christians, it sounds a little wacky, it sounds a little psychic-y, and you don't like that sort of thing. But for Christians in the audience, Christians should be totally okay with the notion that we survive physical death, right? That's kind of one of the things we talk about. But these stories are amazing, and often they're evidential and seem to indicate that consciousness continues even without the brain functioning. When people have no measurable brainwave activity and no heart rates. And yet they are resuscitated later, and they talk about amazing experiences.
Yeah, near-death experiences. So the thing about those is we've actually completely recreated those using a variety of physical, like drugs and, you know, different chemical concoctions and stuff that can be administered safely, obviously, that can completely reproduce near-death experiences. And it's allowed us to isolate what happens. And if I may, for you guys, I would like to read a snippet from a paper. I'm just looking for here we go, because I think that, nope, that's the wrong tab. I think that this just very, very beautifully sums up what these researchers found. And I think that it really helps to, you know, qualify how we understand how these things exist in the brain and how we can reproduce them. If I could just find the right, I might have went past it. I'm almost certain I did, which I do every time, and I don't know how. Here we go. This, let me see. Yes, and this is from SagePub. They say, quote, "Here the authors marshal evidence from neurology, cognitive neuroscience, and neuroimaging that suggests that OBEs, or out-of-body experiences, are related to a failure to integrate multisensory information from one's own body at the temporal parietal junction, or the TPJ. It is argued that this multisensory disintegration at the TPJ leads to the disruption of several phenomenological and cognitive aspects of self-processing, causing illusory reduplication, illusory self-location, illusory perspective, and illusory agency that are experienced as an out-of-body experience or an OBE," end quote. So, and I mean, there's a lot more here that I could read that I'm just not, because I don't want to bore everybody, but it just shows that we understand what near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and these sorts of things and extrasensory experiences. We understand what these are, actually. And we've got a pretty good grasp on how they occur. And straightforwardly, they don't occur if there isn't any brain activity. Somebody might have zero brain activity and get resuscitated and recall maybe certain things they may have been tangentially experiencing when their brain did have activity in it. But they weren't experiencing anything when their brain didn't have activity. And I don't think that anybody's going to be able to show that's been done, that experience has been had legitimately sans any brain function at all.
And facts that can be checked, or they talk about another very interestingly and mysteriously heavenly world that they experience. Now, one of these stories comes from Kimberly Clark, who talks about a patient named Maria. And when Maria had no brainwave activity, measurable brainwave activity, and heart rate, she had an experience like this. When she was resuscitated later, she talked about how she had left her body during the interaction, during the surgery or whatever, and she actually could talk about what was on the floor in the room and what the doctors were doing and things getting moved around while they were trying to save her life. She actually said she went outside of the hospital, and that on the roof of the hospital, there's a blue tennis shoe with a worn out spot right where the pinky toe should be. They went and checked it out. Guess what? She was right. There was a blue tennis shoe up there, same style, she said, with a worn out spot exactly where she said it would be. These stories are amazing because they are evidence that suggests that your consciousness actually continues when your brain isn't functioning. This is amazing. One of my favorite stories is a story of Gary Habermas tells. He's a philosopher at Liberty University, and he tells this story about how he was giving a talk like this before a group of nothing but medical professionals. And as he was talking about the heavenly experiences that people have when they encounter these near-death experiences, he said a woman who was the wife of an ear, nose, and throat doctor over on this side of the crowd stood up. She said, "You're talking about heaven, and I can tell you all about it. I've experienced that." And after a few moments of them staring at her like an animal cracker, like you all are staring at me right now, an oncologist who was an atheist stood up on the other side of the crowd and said, "Well, don't just stand there. Tell us about it." And she said, "Okay, I was giving birth to our third child, and I bled out on the table, and I was declared dead." Now, we're not saying she was really dead. Modern medicine can come pretty close to crossing that line and bring someone back. But while she had no brainwave activity, no heart rate, she said, "I was in an amazing place, a heavenly place." And she said, "I can tell you about it. I'll tell you about the color." And then she stopped herself and said, "No, because when I say color, you're thinking of red and green and blue. These are colors that the human eye can't perceive." She stopped and said, "I can tell you about the music." And then she said, "No, because when I say music, you're thinking about Mozart and Beethoven."
Sorry about the little pause there, but I was just looking up the shoe thing, and I'm struggling to find anything on Google that seems to like actually confirm this. So I'm just going to be a little bit hesitant to accept that story. I just really have to dig into it. But it's not anything I'm being able to like really find something that confirms anything on. So but that's what I was focusing on. So I kind of missed everything Braxton said after that. I'm sorry, but let's continue.
"This is music like you've never heard." She said, "I guess I can't tell you about it." He said, "Let me ask you this. Are you convinced you were there?" She said, "I'm more convinced I was there than I am that I'm here right now." And he said, "My understanding is that the strongest bond two human beings have is the bond between a mother and her child. Do you agree with that?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "Let me ask you this. You had two sons who you knew and loved, and one who was you'd carried for 9 months but had not yet held in your arms. If you had your way, would you have stayed there, or would you have come back to be with your family?" She looked at the ground and she began to weep. And she said, "He could have raised our family. I would have never left that incredible place." You say, "Braxton, do you think that woman went to heaven?" Man, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, there are millions of stories of near-death experiences that seem to suggest we survive after our brains aren't functioning.
Except they don't do that. Nobody's been able to actually isolate these experiences and the time which they started occurring to be able to determine whether or not these people had brain function. And the thing is, oftentimes these people do still have some brain function. It's just not at any sort of like higher level state. So it's not like that they're completely brain dead in a lot of instances. So this idea that people are having experiences, but they are absolutely brain dead, just is not supported by any empirical literature at all.
As you think about that for a moment, I want you to listen.
And I just want to point out, for those that don't know, and Hive Science will definitely know this because she looks into a lot of this stuff, is that a lot of these experiences... Oh, shit, what was I just going to say? Wow, I really just lost my thought completely. Yeah, the story from Kimberly. Yeah, God, I was just going to say something. And I completely forgot what it was. Like it just whoosh, it was there and then it was gone. Whoosh. Wow, that kind of irritates me. Damn it, what the hell? It'll come back to me. I know it will.
Song, beautiful song about life, death, and hope.
Ah, yeah, I remember. And like I said, and Bree's gonna know a lot about this, is that the thing is, a lot of these like there's actually been quite a bit of study into extrasensory perception, into near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, into things like astral projection, into psychokinesis and telekinesis. There's actually been pretty substantial research into those things. Like, those are things that scientists and even governments have actually made meaningful attempts to like see if they can verify. Largely because, you know, if such things were real, think about, you know, how we could use that against other people. So naturally, governments and the military are going to be interested. But those are things that have actually been looked into and researched pretty substantively. And everything's come up completely empty every time, every single time. Just remember that. And we're going to skip over whatever this is about to be.
Powerful song. We have to face the reality of death and what it means for our lives and how we live our lives and whether there's hope. As we come to the end section here, I want us to draw together some of the threads of what we've been discussing, and I want us to think about what it means. So let's look at some of the options that we've mentioned earlier for what consciousness is and how it's possible, and let's look at how those options answer these 4 questions, because they need to answer these 4 questions. So first, how does matter wake up? Are you just your body? Are the brain and consciousness related? Does consciousness exist without the brain?
How does matter wake up? I don't know what that means. Genuinely, I don't know what that means. I have no idea what to make of that question. How does matter wake? I don't know what it means. I mean, maybe that means some sense like how does matter? Like does a material object constructed of physical substrates and engaged in physical processes become conscious? Well, I would argue there is, to some extent, a meaningful description of that. I don't really have the time to completely lay that out, nor do I have the expertise to. That would be a question for a neuroscientist. The picture may not be complete, but we certainly have many pieces of it together. So if you want to know how a material object engaged in physical processes can become conscious, question a neuroscientist. They'll let you know. Are you just your body? Well, no, your body, your brain, brain may be included in body, and all of the processes and functions that it engages in, as it is immersed in this vibrant and massively active external reality. Are the brain and consciousness related? Nobody's going to deny that one. Like everybody, even the dualists, should be in the panpsychists, as crazy as they are. I joke, are going to agree with that one. Does consciousness exist without the brain? I think the 4th one here is like the most pivotal one. And I would say no. I don't think there's any reason to suppose that it does. I don't think there's anything that anybody can show that demonstrates even remotely an implication that consciousness may survive absent physical substrates or processes that which furnish it. And I if there's no reason to think it, then I'm not going to. So I don't think that these are really problems. I think they're questions. I think they're meaningful questions to ask. But I don't think that a physicalist is really going to struggle to answer any of these questions. At least an informed physicalist, I don't think would really struggle to answer any of these questions.
So let's talk about those for just a moment. We have one option, which is the option that's panpsychism, which is a weird, I know, thing, but the idea that everything is conscious, every slice of pizza, every earlobe, every chair in this room, everything is conscious, right? Okay, how does that stack up to answering these questions? Well, how does matter wake up? It would explain that pretty well, because it says it didn't wake up, it's just that it's always been there. It's baked into the system. Consciousness is a part of everything. Are you just your...
I just wanted to say quickly, because I am seeing some new faces in the side chat. Normally, I am on camera. Hi, I'm here. But my Wi-Fi is wanting to be... It's not actually my Wi-Fi, because my phone, both of my laptops are connected just fine. It's strong. StreamYard is, I guess, wanting to misbehave. That's why the video is also very blurry. I have it on the lowest quality setting, and I have my camera off to try to maintain as much stability in this stream as I can. So for the new faces, I am almost, like every live stream that I do, I am on camera, except in instances like this. People like Bree and others, Hive Science in the chat, can testify to that one. So I just wanted to say for the, let's get back to it. It is nobody cares about the meta, but I did want to say just to the new faces that I see in the chat that I am usually on camera, because I know some people don't find it very entertaining to watch, a little chat bubble there, bounce around.
physical body. Well, this answer could also say about that, well, yeah, maybe you're just your physical body because, you know, the consciousness is built into that stuff. But the problem is, it still wouldn't explain how you continue as the same person over time, because those bits, even if you want to say they're conscious, get traded out and you have a new body, and on that view, you'd have a new consciousness. Well, what about the fact that the brain and consciousness are related, that if we affect the brain with medication or an injury, then it does affect consciousness? Well, this view would answer that all right, but it wouldn't answer near-death experiences and how it is that the evidence suggests we go on consciously living after our brain no longer functions.
No, no. Physicalism is no problem with NDEs or OBEs or any of that. Like I said, and anybody that's like looked into this knows, these things have actually been reasonably substantively investigated, and nothing has even remotely indicated that consciousness somehow survives complete brain death.
So it doesn't answer that well. All right, so let's put that one aside for a minute. What about atheistic naturalism? Naturalism that says matter is all there is, it doesn't answer how does matter wake up. There's no answer to that, because if you just say no one's conscious, nothing is conscious, well, then matter didn't wake up.
Hey, Bree, what's it like to see a blurry apologist bouncing around on a blue background? Do you think it can be accounted for purely physically, or do you think we're going to have to, you know, appeal to some magic-y stuff to help explain the what it's like-ness of this visual stimulation?
And even if you don't say that, if you're an atheist, but you want to say we are conscious somehow, there's no explanation for how it is that dirt put into the right order in a brain makes you awake to the world.
Well, it makes sense when God does it. I mean, that's how Adam, you know, like Adam was literally made from dirt. What do you mean dirt can't become conscious? Yes, it can.
So there's a big problem there. It would explain why when you damage or affect the brain, it does affect consciousness because you're just your body. But again, it also wouldn't explain how it is that we seem to go on having some kind of a conscious experience when the brain isn't functioning at a measurable level. So what do we have here? What we have is neither one of these options works. But as you might have guessed, there's a third option, at least. There's a lot to be said that we can't cover here.
I do have to be honest here. I think that what Braxton has done here is really just an argument from ignorance, because he's acknowledged that the fact that physical things can affect like practically all aspects of human consciousness in entirely measurable and quantifiable ways, to the extent that we can control what is affected and how, which is interesting. He says, oh yeah, well, it explains that, but well, it just doesn't explain these other things. You know, how does it explain this? And how does it explain that? Well, the fact that we might not have explanations for those things does not necessarily mean that they don't account for them. We might not know how. It might be something we're working on, but just saying, well, how does it explain that doesn't somehow make the model not likely. That's like a textbook argument from ignorance, or at least like an argument from credulity or something. Well, I don't know how this explains this, so therefore it's not a good idea. So it does. I do kind of get the sense that there's a little bit of like argument from ignorance here. Well, but it doesn't explain these things, so it must be false, or you know, there's no reason to think that it's true.
But there's at least a third option, and the third option is this: maybe consciousness is best explained as coming from consciousness. Maybe a conscious creator made the world with the intention that there would be conscious beings in it who would then be able to interact in this amazing world of sound and color and experience. Maybe this conscious mind would like for conscious minds to be able to commune with him in a conscious way. Maybe God is the best explanation for consciousness.
I don't know. I don't know about that one. I have to ponder that over some tea, you know. What I want people to think about, anybody that watches this up to this point to think about, is this. What would it be like if you had no perceptual apparatuses? Would there be a what it's likeness if you had no perceptual apparatuses? Now, you might be wondering, what do you mean, Leo, by perceptual apparatuses? Well, I mean, our eyes, our ability to feel and smell, all of which is physical. We can define how all of that works very well. So our perceptual apparatuses, we know they are physical. What would it be like? Would there be a what it's like without them? I don't even think that you would have a conscious agent. I think that if you had a human and you took away all of its perceptual apparatuses, in a year, 2 years, 5 years, that wouldn't be a human anymore. It wouldn't be a conscious agent anymore. So it seems to me that consciousness is sort of like built up. It's some sort of system, some sort of processual system. Why do I need to appeal to some sort of God to explain something that seems very, very evidently to be a processual system built up from a variety of stimuli and interactions and functions taking place in a centralized system? I mean, I could get into the complexities of how God is like somewhat complex and that there's all these problems with that as a concept and how those factor into God as an explanation. But I just don't think I need to do that. I don't even think God is really even on the plate when it comes to explaining consciousness. And I don't know if Braxton is a substance dualist or not. But just while we're on the matter, it's like substance dualism is pretty much like the flat earth of like neuroscience and philosophy of mind at this point. Like, it's really not taken seriously. And that's because of many of the advances that we have made in neuroscience and accounting for a lot of these phenomenon that we've previously been told we won't be able to account for. And now we have. We continue to do more. So I don't really even think Braxton's done a very good job of establishing thus far in the video that God could be a meaningful explanation.
How does that explain these questions? Well, it would explain how it is that, or why it would resolve the problem of why it is that matter can wake up, because matter doesn't wake up. Matter makes up your physical body and the hardware of your brain, but it doesn't explain your conscious experience on.
The thing is, anybody here, any physicalist right now could easily just run the interaction problem against Braxton. How does the non-physical mind and the physical everything else interact? What are the mechanisms and can we define them? And the interaction problem is one of the biggest problems for, well, specifically a substance dualist view. It seems that Braxton might be advocating for something along those lines, but I'm not sure.
On this view, your consciousness is your soul, and your soul, it lays on top of you, and that is the part of you that goes on, and that is how you're conscious. Well, what about the idea of, are you just your body? How is it that you remain the same person right now at age 40 that you were when you busted your knee, when you fell off your bike at age 10? Well, the body might be changing, and your body might become a different body in a certain sense as cells cycle out. But the soul would continue unchanged. As would the processes that all those cells take place in. Like, the fact that our cells are consistently cycled out, and like when biologists say that, oh, well, no part of your body is any older than about 10 years. Like, you got to understand what they mean. Like, it's not like literally, it's not like changing, beams in a bridge or ties on a railroad. It's not really quite the same as that, but even when we do those things, the same trains can run over the tracks, the same trucks can run over the bridge. It doesn't affect the processes, that these things get replaced. In fact, the replacing of these things helps furnish the continued procession of all of these various functions. So, and if what we are, if what you are, is
is just processes, or is more rooted in the processes than it is in the structures, then the fact that parts of the structures change, that doesn't, I don't think that really bears on the whole you aspect, because you isn't rooted in merely the physical structures. It's also rooted in the processes that they engage in. And despite the fact that the parts of the physical structure may change, the processes don't.
You should not say that you don't learn things, not say you don't have experiences, but the nature of your soul stays the same. And so your identity.
And just to give a quick example of that, like picture our sun. So the sun is consistently losing helium, or rather hydrogen, and gaining more helium. So there's going to be material things about the sun that are changing, but the proton-proton chain reaction still goes on in its core, and it still emits electromagnetic radiation. So in the same way that the processes are the same despite other material changes, perhaps that's what our you is grounded in. And a physicalist like myself could just argue that. And that's not going to be like an absurd or inconsistent thing to say. One might object to it or disagree with it, what have you, but there's going to be nothing wrong with saying that.
Identity is still intact. What about the idea that of these near-death experiences, that you can live consciously after your brain isn't measurably functioning? Well, obviously this has a great answer to that, and it also even explains why many people have a very interesting afterlife sort of experience that they talk about later. This answers that perfectly well. Your body dies, but your soul continues. Your consciousness continues. Now, there is one problem that I skipped that you might think causes a problem for our view of consciousness, that God's the best explanation, and that is, does consciousness, are the brain and consciousness related? How is it consciousness with medications or injuries? Well,
wait, didn't he already say this?
We don't think that the brain is unimportant. Believers function and purpose. The brain, as I said before, is like a computer that serves up the facts, and then in your conscious experience, you make decisions based on those. And here's what I want you to get from this. When we think about what that's like in your brain, it's kind of like your brain is the hardware. It's like an AM/FM radio. If you remember AM/FM radios, they still exist. That's like your brain. It's the hardware, and a signal or a song plays through that FM radio. But if you,
I'm just going to say right now, the reason that this analogy, oh, well, it's like, consciousness is like the music, and, everything else is like or like consciousness is the pianist, and, everything else is the pianist playing the piano. The reason that there's a physical relation, the reason that like messing with the brain can mess with the mind is the same reason that messing with the piano affects the ability of the pianist to play a song. But the funny thing is that both the pianist and the piano are physical, and we can physically define the relations in which they stand, which produce the music. The thing with an AM/FM radio and the radio waves that it picks up is that the radio waves are physical, as is the AM/FM radio, as is the interactions in which all of this takes place. We can define all of it. Now do the same thing for the brain and consciousness, please. You'll notice they won't be able to. And that, I get it. They're analogies, and analogies aren't perfect, but this is where the analogies break down. And this is what I think makes them somewhat inaccurate. I can define an AM/FM radio, how it picks up the signal and plays music, but you can't do the same. I can define all of this mathematically very well. That's how we developed the technology. But you will not be able to do the same thing with the brain and consciousness.
Damage the radio, the song isn't going to sound right, is it? It's going to come through distorted or in some other way different. But you didn't affect the song. You didn't damage the music. You just damaged the hardware. Now, in this similar way, if you damage your brain, or if you affect your brain with medication, your consciousness may be a little different, but you didn't destroy the beautiful music of your soul that comes through the hardware of your brain. Those are distinct, although they are related. So I submit to you, the best explanation for your conscious experience is that there is a conscious creator who created you with this ability.
You heard it here first, folks. Consciousness is radio waves.
To have free will and make real meaningful decisions, moral decisions, important decisions. You have imagination so that you can think about a beautiful song and write it, or a sculpture and make it, or what you're going to eat and then fix it. You can love because love is real and important, and you can choose to freely give of yourself for the good of another. These things are all possible because of this incredible ability that God gave you to experience the amazing world He made, your consciousness, your soul. And the most important thing, and here's where I will just maybe say some things that sound a little preacher-like. If that's true, then the most important thing you could do with your conscious experience is choose to give it all to Jesus, to serve Him. Now, I haven't said anything about Jesus. You might say, well, you've given me good reasons to believe maybe that there's a soul and maybe God and maybe an afterlife, but how do I know that it's the Christian one? Well, real quickly, I'll just say this. I don't have time for another presentation, and this church has done a presentation on this before, but if you don't believe in the resurrection, I'll tell you what, I understand it sounds wild to people, but I want you to realize this. When we're talking about the facts around the life and death of Jesus, there are a few facts that that historians, whether they're Christian, atheists, or whatever in between, at accredited schools and universities all over the Western world universally agree about, historically. That is that, number one, there was a Jesus, that He thought of Himself as God's agent to bring about the...
Yeah, it is historically accepted that there was a Jesus. But this is also a really good point, a very good point, actually. I think that there are ways people might be able to, say that, well, theism best explains dualism if dualism is true, which I think is generally the argument, the line of argumentation that's given is that if substance dualism is true, substance dualism is best explained by theism or by the truth of theism. Substance dualism is true, therefore theism is true. That was like just right off the cuff, but it would probably be something along those lines. But this is a good point, though, because I don't think that the connection is going to be logical. I think maybe they might try to argue some sort of metaphysical connection, but I think that there's going to be some problems there. But yeah, that's a really good point, Shane. In fact, it was such a good point, I forgot what I was actually going to say. Oh, we love it here.
Kingdom on earth. That it was going to turn the world upside down.
Well, yeah, we don't actually know all that much about what Jesus actually said. We don't. We don't know what it is Jesus actually believed about Himself or others. We don't actually know what it is that He said or taught for the most part. All we can do is trust the sources of people who claimed to know who He was or know who the people who knew who He was were. And even then, that's not really all that much that we have. So when people talk about, well, we know Jesus thought that He... No, we didn't. No, we did not know that. I'm sorry, we didn't.
This message. They believe that He died by Roman crucifixion under the prefect Pontius Pilate, just like the Bible says. They believe that He did that after His death. His earliest followers had experiences, and that they were so committed to this new faith, this claim about the resurrection, that they were willing to be persecuted and die for it, and some of them did die. So here's what I want to say to you. If God exists and God raised Jesus from the dead, if that's true, if that's a historical fact.
Well, I think that if Jesus rose from the dead, that doesn't necessarily mean that specifically the Christian God did it. I don't even think that the resurrection of Jesus is evident. Well, I mean, it's evidence for the Christian God. I don't think that it necessarily...
It means that it's very, very important.
I think I get the joke here. Where he looks like he's giving a pitch, at like a conference for like a startup or something like that, and with the way that he's doing his hand and everything, yeah. That's actually pretty funny. Bit of an esoteric joke, but that's also assuming that I actually got the joke there.
The Bible tells us in Romans chapter 10 and verse 9 that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, you will be saved. John 3:16 tells us, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not give it all to Jesus. Or at least, for some of you, I don't want you to raise your hand, but you've lost someone's died who you love. Picture of them, and it won't be that big, or someplace in the community. Thanksgiving, maybe some...
All right. You can stop sharing that. We can pause that. I'm going to stay off, actually. Okay, so it's showing everything's fine. I might come back on camera. That last little bit, hopefully I'm not breaking up now. That last little bit, okay. Hold on here. Camera off. That last little bit there just seemed to be kind of like preaching. I don't want that on my channel. But yeah, I didn't actually hear much about like how God explains these questions that he was asking. He seemed to just like pose these 4 questions, sort of rushedly claim physicalism can't really account for this, and then claim, oh, God can. So, haha, yeah, go God, yeah. Like there just wasn't much substance there. Like a physicalist could easily object to this case, as I think that I have. I don't think that the 4 questions he asked are that hard to answer. And I don't think that they in any way undermine physicalism or demonstrate God as a better explanation for consciousness, which I guess I don't really know what that means. So yeah, the consciousness one, I think, is falling away, much like the beginning of the universe is. Like these are areas where I think it's just getting harder and harder to try to argue for the existence of God, given the developments that the science happens to be making. But with that, I'm going to let you all go so you don't have to continue to watch a horrible, choppy stream. And I apologize for that. That was definitely StreamYard, not my laptop. I don't know what the issue was. My Wi-Fi strength on my laptop hasn't changed once during this. I didn't see it drop once. And like I said, it's been at 3 out of 4 levels total the whole time. So don't know what the issue was with StreamYard. Hopefully everybody walked away, somewhat entertained by what we had here tonight. And as always, my friends, through reason, we progress.